The stock, the myth, the creature, the short destroyer. That is SMCI. The stock is now broke above $1,000 per share today, following lots of good news. Now, this good news is relative because a lot of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But nonetheless, the stock's above $1,000 per share. We've seen some upgrades today and yesterday. We'll go over your latest SMCI news, just how bad the shorts are taking it, you know where. What could be coming next for SMCI? Are we falling back to 500 or is next stop $2,000 per share? Is it a good time to buy, hold, sell SMCI? And what is my personal position in SMCI? So SMCI and Nvidia have recently been the darlings of AI and the AI revolution. It seems like everyone needs to own these two companies, but specifically SMCI. SMCI yesterday was up 11.25%. Today, SMCI is up over 16%, including the over 2% jump you are seeing in after hours. Let's make one thing very clear. The stock will eventually implode. That's a certainty. Because why? Why will the stock implode? It's a very simple but mysterious question that a lot of people don't realize when they're invested in a stock. Kind of like the saying, you don't know you're in a bubble until you're in a bubble, right? You don't know until afterwards. This is a short squeeze. This is not because people all of a sudden woke up to SMCI and they were flying solo, right? Flying blind. No, this is a short squeeze. Honestly, if this thing keeps going, you're going to have GME beat here pretty soon. The stock is literally vertical. I've never seen indicators so bullish before in my entire life. Not on GME, not on anything else. And that's because SMCI, well, really doesn't have a red day anymore. SMCI's RSI is at 96.79. You're almost at 100 at this point. That's because it's been so vertical. The MACD, never seen this before in my damn life. The MACD line is 135. The signal line is 102. You're solidly bullish. I mean, I don't think it gets more bullish than where you are now. But that doesn't necessarily mean the stock has to come down in the near term. I actually think the next big catalyst for semiconductors broadly, and SMCI more specifically, is Nvidia earnings. That will be next Wednesday, and I will share my opinions and what I think will happen next Wednesday. And we will get into that later into this video, but let's go over some of your latest news. That is because Bank of America analyst Rapaloo initiated coverage on Supermicro, assigning a buy rating and a street high price target of $1,040 per share. Bank of America believes AI fueled demand will continue, driving Supermicro even higher. The analyst further suggested the potential market for AI servers is, quote, much larger than the estimates calculated by his Wall Street colleagues. The bank believes the market for these AI-centric servers could achieve a compound annual growth rate of 50% over the coming 3 years. Given that Supermicro is a leading provider of AI servers, Bank of America expects its revenue to grow even faster. Now, my first thought here is when SMCI does come crumbling down, this analyst needs to be fired immediately. That is throwing any fiduciary responsibility out the window. Now, I get it. Analysts don't necessarily have a fiduciary responsibility to investors because they're just giving their opinions and their coverage and throwing stock prices, like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. This spaghetti obviously stuck to a high number here. This doesn't make any sense. This is what you call institutional FOMO on a level in which you have never seen before. I mean, you thought Tesla's FOMO was insane, or even Nvidia. SMCI has that beat by a long shot. Now, SMCI creates the actual physical servers to put your graphics cards in, right? Your chips you'll get from, let's say, Nvidia. I think it's pretty safe to say that once people get these servers, they're not going to be upgrading them all the time. So to suggest 50% compound growth for a couple of years, I can make an argument that's a little stretchy in and of itself, but we'll just let them go with that. Now, I actually like the company. I actually think the company is a pretty good company, but not at this share price. When this thing ultimately implodes, it could take years to get back up to $1,000+ per share. Now, this news came out 2 days ago for Nvidia. It could actually be bad news, and the markets are, well, just ignoring it. It says Nvidia target lifted at UBS as customers say it continues to raise prices. In the earnings preview note, UBS said customer discussions confirm Nvidia's lead times have come in substantially over the past few months, meaning shipment slots are still available in the second half of 2024. Quote, normally this is bad, but demand for AI compute capacity is still so strong in the near term. We think this just points to significant upside potential to shipments and revenue. God forbid there is bad news in the chip sector. They say, quote, we think Nvidia beats on data center, beats on data center by $2.5 to $3 billion. Data center was where Nvidia and AMD were kind of weak, so that's pretty interesting in and of itself. They expect data center revenue of $19.5 billion versus the street of $16.8 billion, and total revenue of $23 billion versus the street at $20.2 billion, UBS added. Given supply chain work, we see enough capacity for Nvidia to guide to $25 to $26 billion on total revenue. It's going to be a little bit of bad news when Nvidia does report earnings because the expectations are now so high. The expectations are Nvidia is not only going to beat or just meet expectations, but they're going to beat by billions and billions of dollars. Don't get me wrong. I think Nvidia is going to beat just as much as the next guy, and I think these numbers are probably accurate. But when people are expecting these numbers, it's not like the first time Nvidia beat big time and raised guidance huge 3 quarters ago, now going to be 4 quarters ago. It just doesn't hit the same, if you will. Now, SMCI and Nvidia are likely to move in tandem. Now, I'll tell you what destroys SMCI's rally, and it's pretty simple. It will be a growth fear. You don't even have to see growth slow down. But when people start to say, hey, is this growth really going to continue? Is there going to be 50% compound growth for the next 3 years? When that question becomes asked, that's when SMCI will implode. Now, when does the stock fall? That's a better question because the stock is currently going through a short squeeze. And right before we get into that, this article from 7 hours ago points out what I was thinking when I heard of this note from UBS. This article's headline says Nvidia stock, UBS note should raise alarms. Now, in the summary of this article, it says UBS raises Nvidia Corporation's earnings estimates and price target, but warns of near-term trouble for growth due to decreased lead times. Nvidia lead times for GPUs orders have decreased from 8 to 11 months to just 3 to 4 months, indicating a potential future sequential growth peak. While Nvidia's current growth appears strong, the stock may not be priced for the end of its growth, posing a risk for investors. And that's the thing. Coming on Nvidia's earnings, markets are expecting the stock is still going to grow at massive clips, 30+%, but the law of large numbers will start to work against Nvidia. A year ago, Nvidia brought in $7 billion of revenue. This quarter, they're expected to bring in $20 billion. That is almost 300% growth. Nvidia is not going to go from a year from now, year out, go from $20 billion to $60 billion a quarter in revenue. If that's the case, then that's going to be highly unlikely that happens. So the law of large numbers will slow Nvidia's growth. But even more simply than that, ever since Nvidia really shocked the world the first time and shot up like 25% following earnings, Nvidia actually sells off after earnings like pretty routinely. After that earnings, Nvidia sold off 10%. The earnings after that, Nvidia sold off about 22%, and this is over the next like 4 to 8 weeks following earnings. And last earnings, Nvidia did the same, had some huge guidance, good numbers. Nvidia actually sold off 2.5% the next day, and then proceeded to fall by about 10%. So it's not uncommon to see Nvidia fall after earnings, which again, this will negatively impact SMCI. Now, if you take a look at the short position in SMCI, you are 11.61% short. This has increased from about 8.5% back here on January 19th. So shorts have been adding to their short positions. I imagine over the past 2 days or so, a lot of shorts have started to cover. And yeah, it's a rough situation for the shorts. Back here on January 3rd, there was $1.27 billion sold short in SMCI. Today it's $4.86 billion. That's a loss of almost what? $3.5 billion. They are getting absolutely smoked right now. That is who is buying the stock. I don't believe people are actually saying, hey, SMCI fundamentally makes sense to buy the stock at $1,000 when it just reported earnings and it was $500 per share, but something has magically changed since SMCI's earnings. Of course not. Nothing has changed. This is a short squeeze. And a lot of it is also being fueled by option activity. You can see some of these trades. A 1,070 strike here, a call for tomorrow, literally betting for tomorrow, $151,000. Another $1,170 call for February 23rd, $485,000 position there. $1,200 call for next week. $421,000. You get the idea. There is a lot of big trades that are coming in and, helping to push the stock up as well. That is known as a gamma squeeze. Option activity from hedge funds and institutions today was a little more neutral than it has been before. On Wednesday, you had 200 orders from hedge funds and institutions, totaling $116 million with a positive order value of 82%. So yesterday, it was very bullish in the options market. Today, not so much. With a positive order value of 58%, 285 orders totaling $173 million. Trading on a forward PE basis of about 77. Actually, let's just go ahead and calculate these numbers. Maybe not that high. Analysts are expecting about $21 of EPS for next year, which, keep in mind, I mean, if they're wrong and the growth maybe is stalling out, because let's be honest, how many H100s do you need? How many A100s do you need that are $35,000 a piece? And do they, start to come down in price as a lot of these lead times are also falling? I mean, Nvidia is normally selling these GPUs at like $8,000 a piece. They've only went up to $35,000 a piece because there's so many people that want them, and there's limited supply, right? So pricing might start to come down, and that will start to hurt Nvidia and Supermicro's numbers. But let's just say $21 of EPS next year. The stock is trading at about $1,030. Divide that by about 21. Yeah, you're trading at a forward multiple for next year's earnings of about 49. That is definitely high, but it's not outrageous as long as the growth continues. That's why I say if you get a growth fear here, that growth may slow down, that's where you have a problem with SMCI. I mean, and the short answer is, does it make sense fundamentally to buy Supermicro Computer? Absolutely not. I actually think one of the biggest risks here in the near term is SMCI is going to raise capital at some point. If they don't, you really got to question the management anyways. And if they're not raising capital and the stock has went up this much, should you even own the stock? Because that shows management just doesn't know what they're doing anyways. So I think that is a near-term risk that will definitely evolve. Now, today was the highest day of volume that you have seen. You're almost 25 million in volume today. This may be the volume peak, but then again, it looks like tomorrow could also be a strong day for SMCI. Ultimately, I think SMCI crashes and burns following Nvidia earnings. After all, a short squeeze can only last for so long. And I think after Nvidia earnings next week, that's where the house of cards will start to tumble. The question is Nvidia earnings just an A++ across the board? Is there any weak spots this time around? Any weak spots? And you could see a implosion, a large implosion, like a 40% down day. That's the kind of implosion that we're potentially looking at since SMCI has rallied so aggressively and the chasing has been so insane. And ultimately, the short squeeze has just been off the charts. Now, these are the trades I have on Supermicro Computer. I had some puts. I sold out of them because, believe it or not, the puts went up in value about 30 to 40% today, and the stock went up 14%. That's typically a sign, in my opinion, that, yeah, this is probably coming to an end pretty soon. You shouldn't see puts go up 30, 40% if the stock goes up 14%. Right? Puts are supposed to go up in value when the stock falls, not the opposite. Now, this is a trade I bought towards the end of the day today. This is actually down 10%, just because there's a wide kind of bid ask here. This is a next week 650 put. Do I think these will get in the money? Probably not. Is it possible? Sure. I probably will sell that one out before Nvidia reports earnings, and I'm sure the IV will get even more juiced up by then. Now, this is the put that I had since, I believe, yesterday. I bought this put. Nope, only 8 hours ago. Bought this at $258. The bid is at $340. I mean, it's up 37% in 8 hours, basically since the start of the trading day today. Typically, that's not a good sign of a continued rally. That's normally when a lot of firms are like, hey, let's just get some put protection. This stock's probably about to fall. Not a great sign at all. This is an SMCI $600 put. This is for March 1st. So this would cover next week Nvidia earnings and then the following week after that. And honestly, I think SMCI might be $600 per share. I personally doubt SMCI can continue higher at this point. Is it possible ultimately the stock could go to $2,000 per share? Of course it is, but I think the stock's probably headed back down to 500 before you're headed to, 2,000. But hey, we'll see. I mean, this is uncharted territory. I've never seen an RSI of almost 97 and a MACD that's in the hundreds. That's just insane. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Let me know if you are in SMCI and if you're buying the stock, if you're holding the stock, if you're selling the stock. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.